Alright, so most of you may know what Firecrawl is. It's essentially a web scraper for LLMs. So now you can create agents or AI automations that actually have real-time data, web search capabilities, and website knowledge. So you would just input a website URL or a search term, and then Firecrawl would automatically scrape all of that and clean up the data so that it's ready for any LLM like GPT-5, GPT-4, Grok, or Claude. That way, for example, you can create an AI chatbot that has knowledge of your website. You could plug this into your lead automations so that you can actually enrich your leads by searching information of them from the internet. You can do some deep research so your AI model can actually search for stuff. And you can basically connect your AI agent or AI automation to the internet. And with this said, the way you can use the Firecrawl API is via these 4 endpoints. The first one is to simply scrape a URL. So you just input a URL and it'll scrape all of its contents. So if I send this whole website, then it'll scrape this whole page. Then the next endpoint is called crawl. So again, you just input a URL, for example, the Firecrawl one right here. But now instead of just scraping the whole page, then it'll also crawl to the other sub pages like playground, templates, resources, and so on. And it'll scrape everything that it finds. After that, for the map endpoint, well, again, you just simply input a URL. But in this case, it'll just give you a list of all of the sub pages from the website. So for example, if I put in this Firecrawl website, then it'll just list the sub pages like playground, templates, pricing, and so on. It won't scrape them like crawl, but it'll just list them out. After that, we also have search, which in this case you don't put in a URL. You just put in a search query like top restaurants in San Francisco, and it'll do the good old search. And essentially, just like with a Google search, it'll return all of the websites that appear in the list. So if you search for this, and for example, you'll get results like this website URL, and this one. And yeah, that would be all of the primary endpoints, but Firecrawl also has this cool one called extract. In this case, it actually uses AI, so you can simply ask questions like, from all the pages within firecrawl.dev, I want to extract the company name, mission, and whether it's open source. So as you can see, this one is kind of like the combination of the past endpoints, but now mixed with an LLM. And I can see this one being used a lot in lead generation, so very cool indeed. But anyways, Firecrawl does support self-hosting, so you can put it on your computer, on your laptop, or on your VPS. And self-hosting essentially means that you can use it for free. So right now I'm gonna be teaching you how to self-host Firecrawl for N8N locally and on a VPS. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to use all of the endpoints like scrape, crawl, map, search, and extract. So now you'll be able to start with all of your web scraping or web crawling projects. But before we go ahead and set up everything, I'm just gonna show you how all of these endpoints work. So as we mentioned, the first one is called a scrape, and you simply input a URL and it'll scrape all of its contents. So in this case, the way you can call this API is with a post request. Then for the URL, this will depend if you're using locally or with a VPS. So in this case, I'm using it in a VPS, so that's how my URL will look. After that, you can just enable send body and then specify body as using JSON. And here is where you can send all of the parameters like the website you'll scrape and in what format it should return the data as. In this case, I selected Markdown and HTML, so let's give it a go. And boom, as you can see, it scraped everything from the website. Here at the start, you can see that it says our biggest week of announcement, and that's exactly the first thing you see in the website, so you can see that it's working correctly. And since we first specified Markdown, then we get this data as Markdown format, so it's all of this. And then down here, you can see the HTML format, which is all of this. So yeah, it's working amazingly. And for example, with this Markdown format, you can send all of this content to an LLM, to an AI. So now it'll be able to answer any question you have about the website. So that's just one of the few use cases you can do with this. So let's go ahead and test out the crawl endpoint. So again, you just input a URL and it'll crawl all available subpages and scrape them. So here for the start crawl, you just use this crawling endpoint. And for the body, you have to specify the website, the limits of how many subpages you want to crawl, and then the response format. In this case, we're also gonna test out Markdown and HTML. And here we're not just gonna execute a step because this is a two-step process. You first start the crawl and then you have to check the crawl whether it's finished. And if it's finished, then you'll see all of the information right here. So for the second step, it's just a simple get request with the URL from before, but now with the ID of the process. So let's go ahead and execute this one. And as you can see, it just ran the start, so it's actually starting the crawl. And here we have a wait node of around 30 seconds. So that's plenty of time so we can scrape 5 subpages from this website. And once it's finished, then you can see all of the data right here in the get crawl. So as you can see, the crawling status is as completed and it has scraped all of those 5 that we specified. And then in the data here, you can see all of the scraped subpages. So the first one, it's all of this. So we have its markdown format and we also have its HTML format. And in this case, it scraped the actual page. So that's correct. So that's good. So now let's check the second subpage that it scraped, which is right here. And in this case, the markdown only has this. So I think it's a subpage in building process. So let's just check the URL, which is this one, and paste it right here. And yeah, it's just this single page. I think it's a new feature, but anyways, that's correct. So it correctly scraped this second subpage. And now for the third one, again, we have it as markdown format, and we also have it in HTML format, and that's how it would go for all of the 5 subpages that we specified. So awesome, that's working correctly. And now let's go ahead with the map endpoint. Here you just input a URL and it'll quickly get all available sub URLs. So similar to this one, but now it'll just give you the list. So here we're using this /map endpoint, and for the JSON body you just have to specify the website. So again, we're gonna scrape Firecrawl and then execute step, and boom, right here you have all of the subpages neatly listed. You can see the main page, of course, then the pricing one, the blog subpage, and so on. So this is working perfectly as well. And then for the search endpoint, here you just input a search query and it'll search the web to get content from the results. So here we have 2 versions. The first one will just get the search results and the second one will get the search results, but it'll also scrape all of the websites that it returned. So let's test this one out first. Here we're using the search endpoint, and for the body, you just have to specify the query and the limit of URLs that you get. So let's execute this, and then you can see that for the what is Firecrawl query, we got this first result, which is from the Firecrawl website, then this second result, which is from DataCamp, then this third result, which is from Python LangChain. So just like a Google search, you'll get similar results, and you can see that it's successfully working. So now let's test out this one where it actually scrapes all of the websites that it returns. Again, here we are still using the search endpoint, but for the body, apart from the query and the limit, we also have the scrape options format. So in this case, I'm going to specify it as markdown. So when I click on execute a step, here, just like before, we get all of the information from the search result, but apart from that, it actually goes ahead to the URL and scrapes it. So here we have all of the markdown data of the Firecrawl website. And then for the second item right here, which was the one from DataCamp, we again have it all scraped in markdown format, and so on for all of the other results. So boom, that's working perfectly. And now let's go ahead with the extract endpoint. Here again, you just input a URL, but in this case, it's optional. And then it'll extract whatever information you want using AI. So here this endpoint has like 4 types. So the first one is to extract with a schema. So inside it, we're using the extract endpoint, and for the JSON body, we have all of this. So the first part is just where you specify all of the URLs. Then you just have to specify the actual prompt. So in this case, it's asking for to extract the company mission, whether it's open source and whether it is in Y Combinator. So the AI to answer this question will go to these URLs, and then it'll reply according to this schema. So here we have a company mission property, an is open source property, and an is in YC property. So if we go ahead and execute a step, then you can see that for the data, it responded with whatever property you put in. So in this case, the company mission is AI-powered web scraping and data extraction. The is open source property is true, so it is open source. And that is in YC property is true because they are in Y Combinator. So with this, you can get a lot of juicy information. And if you want to check out the sources, you can just go to the sources column to see what websites it is scraped. But after that, we again have the same extract with a schema endpoint, but now without URLs. So as you can see here, we're using the same endpoint, but for the JSON body, well, here we simply deleted the URL part. So now you can just ask it any question and it'll search the entire internet for you and give you an answer. So here I'm just asking if you can find out if you can self-host Firecrawl. And for the schema, I'm using this self-host Firecrawl property, which is a boolean, which means it's either true or it's false. So with this setup, now let's put in execute a step. then we can see that our self-host Firecrawl property is true. So we can indeed self-host Firecrawl just like we know. And if you go to the site, then you can also see all of the sources where it got that response. So it checks websites like GitHub, the Firecrawl documentation, maybe even Reddit, and so on. So that's a really good response, and that's how you can use this node. And after that, then we have basically the same nodes, but now without a schema. So here for this third node, just like the first one, it's super similar, but instead of putting in a schema, you can just get a freeform response up to the AI. So in this case, I have the Apple iPhone 16 website as the URL, and for the prompt I simply tell it to extract the price of the iPhone 16. So if I run this right now, then you can see that it gets a response, and in this case it came in with this schema right here. So that's, like I mentioned, up to the AI, and it says that it's $7.99. So now if we go to the sources, which is just the URL we put in, and go to this URL, then you can indeed see that it starts at $7.99. So this information that it got is correct. But then for this last node of the extract endpoints, then it's basically a super freeform response. So we don't put in any URL, we don't put any schema, we just prompted a question and it'll get a response. So as you can see right here, we just have a prompt property, and I'm asking it, what's the price of an iPhone 16? So if I execute a step, then boom, we get a response. In this case, it decided to use a product and price schema, and for the price it replied the same as before. And if we check the sources, then you can see that for every schema property we get a source, as you can see right here, and this is where you can see where it got all of the information. In this case, for the price, it also searched for Amazon, and I'm pretty sure it's actually cheaper here, so not like in the Apple website. So maybe if you're looking for the cheapest option, then you can just improve your prompt, because this is AI and you do need to have a good prompt. But anyways, this is basically everything you can do with Firecrawl, and I'm pretty sure you can see how powerful it is even if it's self-hosted. So without further ado, let's actually get started with these steps. So let's get started. In this case, let's start with the local setup instructions. So the requisites here are to simply have N8N on Docker. As you can see, I already have N8N running on my Docker container. So if you don't know how to do that, then you can check out this tutorial right here to set it up quickly and for free, because that tutorial teaches you how to self-host N8N locally. But once you have that, then all good, and then we can get started with these steps. So first off, as an optional step, you can also set up a proxy to help with anti-blocking when scraping, because for example, whenever you're browsing a website normally, then that kind of looks like this graphic. So here's you and you have an IP, which is basically your digital internet ID. So when you visit a website, then everything is good, the website welcomes you, you're actually able to view the website, and everything's good because you're simply just browsing a website. But when you do web scraping, then it's something different, because for example, if you're using Firecrawl to do some web scraping for you, then in the first try everything might work perfectly and you would be able to scrape all of the contents from, for example, the Firecrawl website. But if you keep on scraping and scraping, maybe on your 5th, on your 10th try, or also start doing some crawling on the website, so going onto other sub pages and so on, then the website might catch up that you're a bot and you're not a human and you're automating some web scraping. It might look at your IP and say, whoa, this guy is scraping too much. And then what happens is simply that the website will block you, and that's not good. So to fix this, then you can use something called proxies. So in simple terms, it's just giving, for example, your Firecrawl a bunch of different IPs. So if the website starts getting suspicious about, let's say, IP A, then the proxy will just change to IP B and keep on scraping. And again, after a bit of time, then it'll switch to IP C and it'll rotate IPs from time to time. So now you're basically more protected from those anti-blocking policies from the websites, and you can continue to do your web scraping without any hassle. So optionally, I'm also recommending to set up a proxy if you want. If you don't, then it'll still work, but sometimes if you scrape too much, then it could block you. In my case, for my proxy, I use Oxylabs, and for $4 you can get 1 GB of data, and from my calculations that's around 1000 scrapes, so this can last you quite a bit. But anyways, after you have that or don't have that, then let's actually get started with the setup. So first off, you need to find a parent folder you want Firecrawl to be installed in. In my case, I'm going to install my Firecrawl in this BizAI folder that I have. And what the next steps will do is to just put in a Firecrawl folder right here. So to do that, then let's go and open a command prompt. So we just search for command prompt and open it. And then we have to clone the Firecrawl repo into that parent folder. So as you can see right now in our command prompt, we're in users and Ricard, which is my username. So if we clone that Firecrawl repo here, then it'll create a folder inside this address. But since we want to put in that Firecrawl folder inside our BizAI parent folder, then let's go ahead and copy this directory. And then in our command prompt, let's type in cd and paste in that directory and then press enter. So now, as you can see, we're inside this BizAI folder. So now finally we can actually clone all of that Firecrawl inside. So we just copy this command and paste it right here. So it's just git clone and the GitHub URL, which is this one, by the way. So just this one that we previously checked out. But once you have that, then you can just press enter and it'll just do all of its things. So right now it's cloning into Firecrawl. This will take a couple of seconds, so just give it its time. And once it's finished, then you'll be able to see your directory prompt again. So now if you go back to your parent folder, then you'll be able to see a new folder called Firecrawl. And you'll be able to see all of these files. So the next step here is to create a .env file inside it. And to do that, you can just right click anywhere, select new, select a text document, then simply delete everything including that .txt and type in .env, then press enter. It'll tell you if you're sure if you want to change it, then just click on yes, and then boom, you have your .env file. So after that, what you want to do is to simply just copy this .env file template. So just copy all of this and then right click on your env file, select open with and notepad. So once you're inside, just paste all of this in, and then you just have to change some things, which is your OpenAI API key, and if you're using a proxy, then your proxy server, your proxy username, and your proxy password. In my case, I'm just gonna skip that proxy part, so I'm just gonna put in my OpenAI API key. So don't touch anything else and just search for OpenAI API key, and as you can see, it's right here. So replace that API key here with your actual key. In my case, it's this one, and then that's pretty much it. Here, if you set up your proxy, then where you can put in all of your proxy stuff is down here in the proxy server, username and password. So go ahead and do that if you do have them, but in this case, I'm just gonna skip it. So now you can just save this whole notepad. So just click on file, click on save and exit out of there. Then let's continue. So step 6 is to replace that Docker Compose YAML file with this template right here. So in your folder, just search for this docker-compose.yaml file. Then to open it, just right click, select open with and again notepad, and here you'll see that you already have some stuff, so just simply delete everything, then copy this template and paste it back into the file. After that, again, just file, save and close it. Once you've done that, then you're basically finished. Now you can just go back to your command prompt, and here we just have to build and run that Docker container. So right now we're in the directory of the BizAI folder, but we want to go into the Firecrawl folder. So just copy that Firecrawl directory like that, copy it, and then again just do cd and paste in that Firecrawl directory and press enter. So now that you're inside it, then you can just copy this command, paste it, and then press enter. So now it'll just build everything that you have set up, and this will take a couple of minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes. So okay, now it just finished setting up, and you can see that it has finished because all of the services are created or started, and you have your directory prompt pop up again. So now that you have that, then you can go ahead and use it inside your N8N via HTTP request node, and you have to use this URL right here. So first off, this part, and then your Firecrawl endpoint here. So here I have a template ready to go with all of the endpoints, and in this case let's test out the scrape. So as you can see, we have this part of the URL and then the Firecrawl endpoint, which is called the scrape, and then down here in the JSON body we are gonna scrape the Firecrawl website. So let's go ahead and execute step. And boom, as you can see, we have all of the data, everything is working perfectly, and that's how you can set up Firecrawl locally for N8N. But here, apart from that, we also get a cool dashboard we can use, and the way you can access it is by going to this URL. So just put that in your browser, And here's where you'll be able to see all of your scraping information, all of your scraping runs, to check out some logs to see what's going on and so on. But anyways, now that you have this setup ready to go, then the way you can use it continuously is, well, first of all, you can just go ahead and close this because you won't be using it again. And then the way you can turn it on or off is via Docker desktop. So here, as you can see, I already have my N8N container running, and we also have this new container, which is the Firecrawl one, and it's also running. So when you want to use these, then you can just click on play right here, and when you want to stop them, then you can just click on this stop button right here. So yes, very simple to turn on, very simple to turn off, and now you won't be having to go to your command prompt. So awesome, now that would be everything for that local Firecrawl installation. And now let's go ahead with the VPS instructions. Again, here as a requisite, you do need to have N8N on Docker in your VPS. The instructions to do this will depend a bit on whatever VPS provider you're using. In my case, I'm using Hostinger, and if I'm not mistaken, N8N already came in with Docker. I'm not sure if I put it afterwards or if it came in directly, but either way, I'll be leaving some tutorials in the description. It's super easy to do. But anyways, once you have that, then you're ready to go to follow these steps. So the first thing here, which is optional, is to set up a proxy to help with anti-blocking when scraping. I already explained what this is and how to get it when I explained this local installation. So if you want to, you can rewind the video a bit to learn more about it. But essentially, some websites block you if you scrape them too much. So what a proxy does is to prevent that. And since in the local installation we didn't use it, then now let's actually use it so you can see what to put in the setup settings. So now with that said, let's go with step 2, which is to open our VPS browser terminal. So in my case, in Hostinger, I can just click right here on browser terminal, and it'll look something like this. And here is where we will put in some commands. So continuing, now we actually have to clone that Firecrawl repo. So for that, we have to put in this command, and this will just create a folder called Firecrawl, and it'll have everything ready to go. So this URL is just this GitHub that we have previously checked. So now let's just go ahead and copy this, delete this fluff that we put in, and right click and paste and enter. So now it's just cloning everything into Firecrawl, as you can see right here. And to check if it's done, then you'll just see again your directory prompt right here. So I see it, so that means it's done. And now we just have to go inside that Firecrawl folder we just created. So to do that, you can just put in cd and then the path of your folder. In this case, I created the Firecrawl folder inside the home directory, so I can just put in Firecrawl and then press enter. And now you'll be able to see that your directory prompt is with this Firecrawl right here. So now that we're inside, then we have to create and edit some files. And unlike doing this with an interface, like for example with files, here we can just create our .env file by right clicking and add in something, or we can just edit something by double clicking in it. Well, here in our VPS, we don't have an interface, so we have to do everything via command prompt. So the first thing we have to do is to create a .env file. And the way you can do it via this is simply by putting it nano and then .env. So just put that in and then press enter. And now you're inside it and you can put in anything you want. So here, let's put in this env template that we already have. So just copy all of this and paste it right here. So delete that fluff again, right click, paste, and you can see that everything is right here. So let's scroll a bit up. And then just like it says in the instructions, the only thing you have to change is the OpenAI API key. And if you're using a proxy, then the proxy server, username and password. So right here, let's control this with the keyboard arrows, and let's change this OpenAI API key and paste in our own. So just right click and paste it. And in this case, for the proxy, I am gonna put in a proxy unlike the local setup, so you can see how it looks. So for the proxy server, just put in your server depending on whatever proxy provider you're using. Then put in your username and password that the provider told you to put in. So once you have that, then everything is ready to go. So to save this, you can just do Control O, enter, and to exit out of there, Control X. So now that's it for the .env file. And then we have to edit this Docker Compose YAML file. So to edit it, again, you can just do nano, then docker-compose.yaml, and then press enter. And in this case, it already comes with something inside, so we're just editing it. So here you're just gonna delete everything and copy in this template right here. So let's just select everything, then copy, then delete all of this, then right click and paste in that template. So as you can see here, everything is pasted correctly. And then to save, you can just do Control O, enter, and to exit out of there, you can just do Control X. So now that's basically everything. So now let's build and run the Docker containers. So to do that, you can just copy this command and paste it right here and press enter. And then it'll do its whole job, and this does take around 5 to 10 minutes approx. And okay, once it finishes, you'll see something like this. So all of the services built, created, or started. And you'll see that you also have your original directory prompt right here, so that means it's finished. Then you're basically done, and the way you can use Firecrawl inside N8N is via a HTTP request node with this URL. So it's this part first, and then your actual Firecrawl endpoint here. So right here, I already have a template ready to go, so I'm just gonna test in this scrape endpoint. As you can see, we're using this URL, and for the JSON body is where all of the parameters will go. In this case, I got it from the documentation. And here, I'm just gonna test out scraping the Firecrawl website. So I'm just gonna click on execute step, and boom, as you can see, everything is working. And yeah, well, you can see that everything is working perfectly. In the beginning, I already demonstrated how all of these endpoints work. So yes, that's basically how you can self-host Firecrawl in your VPS to use with N8N. There's a lot of potential of things you can create with all of these endpoints. For example, a RAG website builder, or a lead researcher or enricher agent, a web browsing agent, and so on. So I really hope you like this tutorial and that it helped you. And by the way, once you have done all of this, then you can simply just exit out of your terminal and use it forever. Remember that we have a Skool community where you can simply download all of the templates that I build on my YouTube channel. You'll also get a more direct access to myself for N8N support. And of course, you'll have access to the community and any insight that they might share. If you learned something and liked this video, then check out my previous videos because I do very similar stuff. And subscribe so you don't miss out on any future ones. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for almost 4,000 subscribers. I really appreciate all of the support that I'm getting. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.